That's fine. Let me start by telling the radio audience and video audience who I am. My name is George Edson, and I am from Cornish, New Hampshire, and we have a home in Key West that my wife and I spend the winters at. This is our 15th winter, and in the process of being down here, we met Miss Lenora Lopez and have been friends with her for over the years. And she is a wonderful, distinctive woman with a long lifespan whose memories of Key West we would like to record. So the purpose of this recording is to do two things. One is to record the history of her family and her memories of that, and her memories of Key West. So start out, Miss Lenora, about telling us how old are you today?
Today I am 98.
And your birthday is?
My birthday is September the 9th, 1924. And I was born here in this house at 1309 Pond Street.
And you have lived your entire life in this house?
That's correct.
You didn't go away for 2 weeks to summer camp or?
No, I did not go to summer camp. But I used to babysit all the time.
All around the neighborhood?
You know, I used to get paid. I used to pick them up after school and bring them to the parents. I had them for several hours. I think we used to get paid about $1.
$1 for a day?
Yeah, well, it was in the afternoon after school. And I used to mind a little girl. Her name was Judith Palacier. She was born right next door. Her mother was a friend of my sister's, and there used to be 3 other girls that used to babysit, and we used to meet in the Bayview Park. We took the kids there when we were babysitting. Then we took them down on Duval Street, next to the La Concha Hotel on Duval Street. There was an empty lot there, and we used to take the kids there so they could play.
So let's go way back in your family, and let's go back to your grandfather on your Lopez side. He tell us about him.
Well, I don't know too much about him. When I was born, all of my grandparents were dead, but my grandfather, Emilio Lopez, came from New York with my daddy. They came here to open up a cigar factory, and at that particular time, my grandfather was a millionaire. But when they started making the cigars by machinery instead of by hand, he invested his money in these machines, and the company that was going to make the machines, they went into bankruptcy, and so my grandfather lost his money.
So tell us about why your grandfather came to Key West from New York. Had he been in the cigar business? What would have caused him to come down here?
He was in the cigar business up in New York. He had his factory up in New York City. They lived right in New York City. I've been up there where they lived on a stone house. They lived right in New York City, right on Times Square is. And they came here to open up the factory. And my daddy came with him because my daddy used to work in the factory. But my brother also had a brother named Victor, but I never met him. He never came to Key West. But I found out of late that he was the one that was the salesman for the factory. He never worked in the factory, but my daddy used to pack the cigars. He also made the special gift boxes that he delivered. And one time when we were up in Philadelphia, we visited this cigar store where they had a box where he had done the gift box.
Now I have.
And in the cigar box, they had a special patent. We used to have a box here, but we don't have it anymore. There was a picture of his sister that was inside of the cigar box.
It was part of the label.
Yeah, part of the label.
So your grandfather's name, I pronounce it Remigio?
Remigio Lopez.
Okay.
Trujillo Remigio Lopez.
And I have an ancestry, a family tree in front of me. It shows that he was born in Cuba. Does that agree with what you would have thought?
Could have been. But originally, I didn't know that he was born in Cuba because I thought that they had come from Spain because they were in Spain. I don't know what town, but I was told that they escaped there with jewels around their belts, and they went to Cuba. But I didn't know that he was born in Cuba. I was told that they escaped from somewhere in Spain to Cuba. And when there was a war breaking out in Cuba, the young men, they escaped one night in some boats, and they went to New York, and that's where he opened up his factory in New York City.
Now, you've used the name Trujillo before.
Trujillo, yeah.
And who do you think he was?
Well, that's the same person. His name was Ramillia. In the olden days or something, they used maiden names with the marriage names. I think his name was Ramillia Trujillo Lopez.
Yeah, your tree is very, very interesting, and I would give you credit and your family credit for all that you have done so far. I just looked at this book you showed me of family history that members of your family have put together. You have a very interesting family tree, and I would suggest that your family might like to look into it further. For instance, your Remigio, excuse my pronunciation, is shown as your grandfather, and your great-grandfather is shown as Don Diego Lopez a Trujillo. So
and also, I've learned recently that they were also of royal descent.
Okay.
I don't know how they were royal, but I've learned that they are of royal descent. And also, my mother, the Ayalas were of royal descent from Ponce de Leon.
And I do find a lot of Ponce de Leon in your tree. I can't go back to one Ponce de Leon,
but I think he was a cousin to one of the what do you call them? I don't know.
Well, and of course the reason I can't go back to him is that ancestry doesn't go back that far. Ponce de Leon was born in 1474, so I can't do that. But there's a lot of
Well, you know, there in this town, what is it? Not this is St. Augustine.
Yeah.
Well, they got a lot of history about Ponce de Leon. And one time when my mother was there in the carriage, and they were talking about Ponce de Leon, and I was saying we were related. He said, well, you know more about Ponce de Leon than we do. So there's a lot of stuff up there, but I don't know.
So I went to the History Center here in Key West, and there was a lot of Lopez. It could have been the biggest name in cigar making back then, and there was a number of factories, and you've mentioned you thought your grandfather's factory was over. Well, anyway, let me tell you, there was one on Thompson and South. Does that sound about the right area?
No, it was over there by. It was over there by one of the motels. I don't know the name of the motel. It was over there by one of the motels. It was a big factory. Also, this isn't on my side of the family, but it is. My Aunt Nora, that I'm named after, my mother's sister's husband, Derry Sands, he was a tobacco auctioneer, and he had a factory here, I understand, down on Duval Street somewhere. He was an auctioneer, but he left Key West and he went to Puerto Rico. But he was an auctioneer.
So, tell me what your memory is of your grandfather. How old was your father when his father's cigar factory failed?
I don't know.
Your father's listed as a cigar packer, and I don't have. I have so many notes. I can't find everything in front of me. but at the library he is listed way back as a cigar packer, and I know from your audio interview with Bob, your neighbor next door,
That's what he did. He was a packer.
you said that he also later did various jobs, including at one point working at the Navy.
Yes, for the Navy. He also, when the factory closed here, he also opened up what they call he opened up a small factory himself on Caroline Street, and my friend Bobby that comes to visit me, her grandfather worked for my daddy. It was a small, what do they call it? I forgot what the name of this.
You named the name of it in your audio interview, and what it means is a cigar factory, maybe with an owner and one employee.
Yes. So my daddy was the owner, and Mr. Shore was the packer. And he had this little cigar factory. It was down on Caroline Street. Why it closed, I don't know.
Okay. Now let's talk about your mother. They met, you said, at the cigar factory.
My mother worked at the cigar factory, and that was where they first met. But I understand that they used to have candy parties. My mother used to make caramels, and they must have met on this party or something. I don't know.
So tell me more about your mother. She was a conch.
Yes.
So how far back? I have her family tree here also, and
there were three.
Go ahead.
She had two sisters. One of them was named Lenora, that I'm named after. She had another sister named Ruth. They were three sisters, and their mother's name was Minnie.
Her parents.
And Minnie they were Atchisons.
Okay, her parents, who you never knew any of your grandparents.
I never knew.
Okay.
They had passed away when I was born.
Your grandfather on your mother's side was Manuel, and I have a problem with that name too, Ayala.
Yeah, Ayala. Yeah.
Ayala. Manuel, and it says he was born in Cuba. It says he died in Florida, so it doesn't say.
Yeah. He worked in the cigar factory too. He worked in the cigar factory in Tampa, Florida.
Okay.
Manny Ayala. He was also in the Navy when he was a young man.
And Minnie, his wife, your grandmother, it says was born, again, this is strange when they give just counties. I haven't seen it that often. Monroe, Florida, and she died in Florida, United States. Again, strange that they don't list the location. But you say she was a conch. She was actually born here. Her parents were, as you say, Atchisons, and
when I was talking to Martha last night, that family originated from the Bahamas. There's a lot of people in Key West that came from the Bahama Islands.
Right. So I'm fascinated by that. There seems to be black Bahamians and white Bahamians, and they both came here.
Yeah. And I say a lot of we call them colored, but there was a lot of colored people here that was from the Bahamas, and I don't know just how to say this, but they seem to be of a different type than anyway. And Martha was saying that they came, and the original name, I don't know, there was a Saunders. Originally the name, somebody married a Saunders. Was it my Uncle Bub married? My Uncle Bub married a woman, her maiden name was Saunders.
Your grandmother, Minnie Atchison, was the daughter of William Atchison and Matilda Saunders.
Yes. Yeah, her maiden name was Saunders before she married an Atchison.
They were your great-grandparents. I've heard that name Saunders from you before. You don't have any Saunders relatives that you know?
The only family that I knew was the Saunders were just neighbors. here, but we weren't related. But they were from the Bahamas, but they weren't related to us, to my knowledge.
So again, it's very confusing, and a person listening to this can't keep score without a family tree. But who did you say came from the Bahamas? Atchison?
Yeah, I think my Uncle Bub, they said he came from England on a, what was it, not a regular ship, but with guns on it or something, what you call them? It's not a battleship, but some kind of a ship. But I was told he came from England, not from the Bahamas.
I have here that William Atchison, he's not Bub.
No, that must be his brother. My uncle was named Bubba Alfred.
Right, Bub would have.
And I was told he came.
Well, I don't want to get too deep because, as I say, it'd be completely confusing to anybody listening. But let's get to your immediate family. Your father. Tell us where your father was born.
My father was born on the USS Kamal, coming from New York to Key West. And he was named Kamal because at that time it was custom to name the babies that were born on the ship Kamal. So my daddy was named Kamal.
And that ship was coming from New York to
Key West.
From New York to New Orleans, you
said?
Well,
I don't know that. I'm just guessing because my daddy did not stay here as a baby. So I'm assuming they had family. He had an uncle in New Orleans that he visited one time because my daddy's mother was of German descent. She came from Frankfurt, Germany as a baby to New York City. So when my daddy was little, he didn't speak Spanish at all. He didn't know Spanish. But when we went to visit this uncle in New Orleans, he learned how to speak Spanish. So I'm just assuming that as a baby, that the USS Kamal went to New Orleans, and then they went back to New York because my daddy never lived here in Key West. He lived in New York City until he was a young man when he came with his daddy to open up the cigar factory.
Now, I'm a little confused in what I'm holding in my hand, but I see the name Rose Lopez.
Yeah, Rose Lopez that was his mother's name. That was my grandmother's name. That was my daddy's mother.
Okay. Now
she's buried. I don't know where she's buried in New York City.
Now your father had sisters, Julia, Teresa, Felicia, and a brother Victor.
Victor. And Victor, I understand, did not work in the factory. He worked as a salesman. He went around salesman or something.
And the sisters, they all grew up in Key West?
I didn't. I only met one sister one time. I don't know where she disappeared to. And Rose, I think she used to live in Miami, but I didn't have too much connection with them.
Okay, but we're talking about Julia, Teresa, and Felicia. Those were your aunts? You never knew that much?
I never met them.
Okay, so you have a brother, Warren, and a sister, Flora.
Yes.
And Flora is gone. She passed in 2015. And she lived where?
She lived over on South Street.
And so she
married a Garcia.
And she was born. This house, I have your address before here where your family lived. Do you know where it was?
What?
When your uncle built this house for your family.
They lived down on Eaton Street. They had 3 houses down on Eaton Street. The families, they used to live together. And I think they had one great big house in the front, and then they had another house in the back. And they used to live down there. Okay. So they moved from down on Eaton Street, and my uncle sold the houses down on Eaton Street, and they built these 3 houses here. This one, the one next there, and the other one.
I have a picture. There is a picture at the Historical Society of where your family lived, and I'd forgotten it was Eaton. It was one of those streets. But does it ring a bell to say the building with the red doors? That doesn't.
I don't know, but on the corner now on Eaton Street, there is a motel. And then as you drive down Eaton Street, it was some houses right there in the section of that block. So, but of my understanding, there used to be one great big house, and then there was another house in the back that families lived together.
Yeah. I have a picture of a big Lopez house, and it may be the one you're talking about. So can you tell me what your phone number was in 1949?
My phone number was 305-294-5071.
Okay, that's with the dial. Do you know what your phone number was before dial?
I didn't have it. We didn't have a phone number. Here on Pine Street, the only person that had a phone was Mrs. Parks, and it was the one that you had to put up on the wall, and the thing was down on the side. And the reason I know, because it was here, right, this house right here on the corner of Georgia and Pine. That was the only phone in the whole neighborhood.
Well, somewhere I came across a phone number for Lopez that was 1387R. But anyway, well, tell me.
That must have been another Lopez.
Okay.
And the house that's here on the corner that they just remodeled. It was my daddy's uncle that lived there. That was originally the only person that came here besides my grandfather was my daddy's uncle, Lopez, and they lived right there in Pine Street. And he was married to a very old lady. She was German, and the reason I remember her is because my aunt here over on Olivia Street had a tamarind tree. And we used to, my cousin and I used to like to eat them green, and you get sick. But she used to take the ripe tamarinds and preserve them in this jar. So I used to go over there to get these tamarinds.
So throwing organization to the wind here, let's go off on the tangent of the memories of Key West, the changes to the infrastructure, like telephones. So you're telling me that's very, very interesting. And that you would have been how old when there was no phones on the street? You as a kid, or?
Yeah, as a kid. I was just a kid.
So somewhere I had a note about outdoor toilets.
Yes, we had outdoor toilets. There was no bathrooms in the house. There was outdoor toilets. We had an outdoor toilet here in the backyard, just one toilet. And they used to, instead of using the toilet paper that we use now, we used to use Sears catalog and Montgomery catalog. But next door, if this one was busy, we used to go to the Saunders because they had a great big toilet there that you could go in. It would be 3 people could go into their toilet. So if this one was busy, we'd go next door.
That's what you call a 3-holer.
Yeah.
So tell me about water. Was there a water system in this city as long as you remember?
No, there were cisterns. We used to catch the rainwater. And we had a cistern, I think I just told you. This cistern ran from my backyard to the next door backyard because it was my mother and her mother lived right next door. So they used the same water. And they also had wells. There was a well back here on this side of the yard. And one of my what would she be? One of my mother's sisters was drowned in this well here. Then we used to have a well in the backyard. So we had well water. If you dig 6 feet here in Key West, you could get water.
So, fresh water.
Yeah, it was fresh water. Now, next door they tried to dig a well and they hit salt. But we had a well here. It was good fresh water. We used to bathe in it.
How did they drill a well back then?
I guess with a pickaxe. I don't remember. But they dug the well till they got to 6 feet and you got water. 6 feet. 6 feet.
So they had to go beyond the cap rock. So tell me about the streets. Let me say that in the year of 2023, there are friends of ours who come to Key West expecting to find the streets are dirt because they think this is some kind of a quaint little village.
Yeah, well, a long time ago, Truman Avenue was noticed as Rocky Road. And there used to be, this street wasn't paved when my mother and her sister were young kids, because I think I've told you this before, my Uncle Bob put this street light here because there wasn't no lights on the street.
So he put a street light out and probably wired it to his own house.
I don't know, because at that time he was the mayor, so he could do anything.
So you're talking, you back to Truman.
It was called Rocky Road.
It seems like you told me once that you didn't remember dirt, but you're saying this. Did you remember that?
No, I didn't remember
Okay,
that. I was just told that it was called
right.
Rocky Road.
So in your memory, the streets were paved. Now, let me suggest, though, that the lanes would be often dirt.
Probably.
So if you go downtown, especially in the middle of Old Town, they wouldn't have paved those lanes, I think, till somewhat later.
I don't know, because I didn't go down in that section of town.
So completely jumping around.
But when we used to go down on Duval Street to the movies, when I was a little girl, this Duval Street was paved.
Sure. Okay, tell me, that makes me think about...
And Duval Street is different. The Duval Street, I guess you know that it runs from the Gulf to the Atlantic Ocean. But we on the corner now where they have CVS, there used to be Cresses. We had all the stores there. The merchants were Jews.
Yep.
It was Apple Roost. It was Apple Roost. Apple Roost had a shoe store. There was a Holzberg and a Ronovitz and a Lewinsky and a Cantor. Now the Cantors and Lewinsky's, they used to sell men's merchandise, but Holzberg's was right next to Crest, and they used to sell women's and everything. And Aronovitz did too. That was a great big store. It was across from the Monroe Theater. But during the Second World War, then the chains came in, Mangles and all the other chains came in.
So Jewish people have been long recognized as major business people.
Yes, and we used to know them. I mean, they were the nicest people to deal with. As a matter of fact, Aronovitz that I used to buy for, we got a real friend. He was the owner of the store. And if I went in to buy something, they used to put, keep certain things in the back of the store and then put certain things out for sale. And one day I was trying on a skirt. He said, "But Lenora, this will fit you." He said, "This is a good price." I said, "Yeah, it's a good buy, but it doesn't fit me. But I'm going back there in that store there in the back there where you keeping all those dresses, and I'm going to get one of them." He kept things in the back. So, but I mean, we were friendly, is what I'm trying to tell you.
Oh yeah. Well, there's a huge Jewish.
I mean, even though he was in business and he was the owner, he didn't have to be that friendly with me.
Right. Huge Jewish story here in Key West of the advent of the Jewish people and the business, the what they built up here. We've been to the synagogue and there's a bunch of pictures over there of all the stores and
then Perlman used to carry shoes. And there used to be a lady, I have a real narrow foot. And so I went to Mr. Perlman. I said, I got a narrow foot. I come in here to buy shoes. And I never could find a pair to fit me. So after that, he used to order special shoes for me.
And you know that we live on Paula Avenue, and Paula was Mr. Perlman's daughter.
Oh, he was. Well, Perlman was real nice. But this Cuban lady that worked for him, she used to have such a trouble trying to... I said, "Mr. Perlman, buy some shoes that I can wear." He was real nice. And then the Apple Roost, they had a store across the street, and Cantor used to sell men's things that my mother used to buy for my brother. And my brother used to caddy for Mr. Cantor because he played golf. Yeah.
So
and he had his house right there on the corner of Duval and Southern Street. He was right close to the theater. It was a Strand Theater, and he lived right there on the corner. Then there was another lady had this brick home right on the other side of the Strand Theater, and I don't know if it was her husband or her son ran a saloon that was right next door.
So is that where Apple Ruth Lane is?
No, Apple Ruth was right on Duval Street.
Right.
She ran a dress shop.
So is his house gone?
I don't know.
So it's funny, they say things and they segue into another question. Dennis Pharmacy.
Yes.
What are your memories of Dennis Pharmacy?
Well, the only thing about Dennis Pharmacy, I didn't go there too much because I was on the other side of town here. But my friend across the street, what was her name? She died recently. The last name was Robinson. She used to work there. She used to work there at Denny's. What was her name? Let me see. And they used to live across the street. My friend Robin bought that house from that family.
Dennis Pharmacy we closed about 10 years ago, and that was in business for many, many years.
Yeah. Sometimes I used to go there and get hamburgers or something. They had a lunch in that. Sometimes I'd go there and we'd have lunch or something. But I never got drugs there because we had a pharmacy right here on Truman and White. It was a Gomez pharmacy, so we used to go there. And then there was a pharmacy that when I was taking care of my mother, there was a pharmacy with the Cobos that was down on Fleming Street. So I used to get the drugs from Cobos Pharmacy.
So
As a matter of fact, they filled a prescription that was wrong. When I went to give it to my mother, I said, "Mama, don't take this. This is wrong." So I called them up immediately, and they came and got it, and they had prescribed something. They had put something in the prescription that didn't belong to my mother.
Well, that's good that you recognized it.
Well, I was always taking care of her, and I said, "Mama, don't take this. This isn't your prescription." And I called Cobra immediately, and they sent the guy up on the bicycle, and they took it back, and it was the wrong prescription.
So tell me about your working career. When you got out of high school, you went to work for Western Union.
I went to work for Western Union, but they were very nice people to work for. But I didn't like taking the messages with the things over my ears. I had to listen there and listen to the person that was giving the message. And I didn't particularly like the job, but the owner of the place, they were very good. I liked working for them. So I quit there, and I went to work for the gas company, and they were very nice people to work for. They had the company was down there on 7th Street, and one day my cousin's mother, Jesse's mother, she had got to meet this officer, Mr. Heath, and she said, "Lenora, do you want to go to work down in the Navy Yard?" And I said, "Of course." So we made arrangements, and I had to go take it. We had to take a test. We took a test down there at the post office. I was there at that time. It was down on Simonton Street, and since I didn't have any. When I was in school, I wanted to be a dietitian, so I hadn't taken any. I had taken typing and stuff, but I hadn't continued it because we had a terrible teacher, and a lot of us seniors we quit the class. But I went and I took the test anyway, and I passed the test. So the only thing that they had open on the Navy Yard was a messenger. So I went to work as a messenger first, and then it was just in one office. This was a nice young woman I worked with, and this was one officer. His name was Van Dyke. He was, I think he was from New York, but he wasn't a regular. What they call him? He wasn't regular. He was in the reserves. Anyway, he was real nice to work for. But the guy that was in charge of him was regular Navy, and they didn't get along too well. But anyway, to make the story short, the girl that I was working with, her brother was in war, but he was in an accident and he was killed. And she left me in charge of the office, and I was just a messenger. And I had to go give these messages when they had the ships going up on the wharf and everything. And they liked what I did, so they promoted me. So I went into the outside machine shop, and I was a timekeeper. I worked doing time. And then they liked me so well there. So they put me in planning. I went up in planning, and I worked in the planning office during the work at nighttime, working up jobs when the ships came in, where they had been bombed and they needed to be repaired. I worked in nighttime till 2 o'clock in the morning. We worked 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. Sometimes we'd get a day off, but very seldom. And then after the war, we had war service. When we took that test there in the post office, they were called war service appointments. So after that, we were let go. And so one day, my boss came knocking at the door, Mr. Delaney. He said, "Do you want to go back to work, Lenora?" And I said, "Of course." But I had to go take a test. And we took a test in the study hall up there at the high school. It's now there. Now there's a city hall there on White Street. And I passed that, and I went to work there. So I went to work back there in that office, and then they were having, some lady was giving them trouble down in dispersing, so they transferred her down to accounting, and they transferred me to dispersing. So I went to work in dispersing, and I worked there till I retired. I went there as a clerk, and I retired as a supervisor.
So how much time were you out of work when they laid you off to when they brought you back?
Not too long, about a month or so.
And when you say he knocked on your door right here.
Right here, Mr. Delaney. His name was Mr. Delaney. He was married to one of the very popular people in Key West. His father-in-law, I think, was a commissioner at the city. They used to live there, of course, from the convent. His name is Delaney. He was a very nice boss.
So the gas company, what kind of gas? Propane gas tanks?
Yeah.
You never had piped-in gas here?
No. We used to. My mother had a gas stove where they used to put. I think I told you the story about they had to put a meter in it, and the kids stole the meters. Then after that, she bought a kerosene stove, and she didn't like the kerosene stove. So after that, she got an electric stove. So I've always had an electric stove. But the people next door, they had propane. They used to have propane there, and they got propane there. But I don't have propane. I have electric.
So Western Union, you see, us kids don't know anything about Western Union because that had come and gone by our day. Western Union was in the telegram business, totally, right?
I don't know. And I still think, I forgot where that was located. Down on Caroline Street. It was just one building. I think it's still there. And I was the only one there. It was a boss. There was a young woman that was in charge of me, but I think it was her dad that was a big boss there. It was just a very small building. And I think I was the only one that was working there.
So a telegram and...
and I hated it with those things on my ears, and then you had to listen to what the person was telling you. I didn't like it.
And then did you have to type what they were saying?
And then you had to. I think while they're giving the message, you had these things on your ears that you had to listen to, and then you had to type what they were saying. And I just didn't like. I didn't mind doing that and listening to them, but I didn't like to have to listen to the things on my ears and stuff.
So we've seen telegrams, and they're little scraps of paper pasted onto another paper.
But I don't remember about that. I only remember taking the telegram itself.
Okay, so you don't remember how the person got a telegram. In other words, they were delivered by somebody.
Yeah, evidently. I only remember...
You don't remember anybody coming in to take your telegram and deliver it?
No, I only remember taking the and it's very vague. Because I just didn't like that job.
Okay, now let's talk about race relations. Let's talk about segregation, because just in the last year, we've learned more about how recently Key West was segregated. My wife and I were in high school in the 60s, and it was in the 60s that I think Key West became desegregated.
I can tell you exactly the time. When Sandra, my niece, was a little girl, they did it. She was probably in, maybe the second or third grade. And we know how we got it because they were living up on Stock Island, and I had to lend her dad the car to bring her from Stock Island here to take it to this school, and they had to list this address that she was living here, or else she would have to go down to Colored Town. They were taking the colored kids and the colored teachers and putting them up here in the white section, taking the white teachers and everybody and putting them up. It was crazy, crazy. Finally, they decided that it wasn't nothing, I don't know, but finally they decided it was a bad idea, and they went back to, but that's what they did. They were taking the colored and putting them in the white section, putting them in the colored section.
So you said, how old is Sandra now?
She's in her 60s, and she was just a little girl. She must have been maybe 8 or 10 or something like that.
Let's say she was 10, and let's say so 50 years ago, the 70, it was...
And not only her, but her little girlfriend, Carol, that she went to have dinner with the other night. They both, her parents were living in Stockholm, so they used to come to stay here to stay before the school opened so they could go to school up there. and then she used to come here for lunch. It was crazy.
So, Commissioner Lopez, which you're not related to.
No, we're not related. There was only one other person that was related to, was Lopez, that used to, he married, what was the name? Her brother used to be one of the commissioners, and when we were at school, her brother used to look like Loretta Young, so we used to call him Loretta Young, and he was with the tax collector for a long time, Knight.
Oh, yeah.
Well, he was married to one of my cousins, a Lopez, and that was the only other Lopez that was here, because the uncle used to live here in this house.
So Commissioner Clayton Lopez is black, and he's
not related to us. Not that I'm not black, but when I had when Crystal took it, saying, I said, do I belong in Colored Town? She says, no, you don't have no colored blood.
So he remembers, he's in his 60s, and he remembers growing up in segregated Key West, and he tells the story that at night the kids would all play together, the white kids and the black kids, and then they'd go back to their black houses and their white houses, and the next day they'd go to their black school and their white school, and I guess it was desegregated, probably legally, because it had to be, but you don't remember any race problems here in town. I asked Aaron, the black undertaker, I forget his last name.
I think his name's Lopez, isn't it?
Could be. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I think, isn't that funny? And I asked him the same question, if he remembered any issues.
Well, I could tell you something that's not an issue. When my mother, we used to have a colored lady. We call them colored. Now they call them, I forgot, but we always refer to them as colored.
Yeah.
And she had a colored lady, her name was Kathleen. They used to do the washing for my mother outside. They used to they used to hang the clothes on the line. And she had a little baby, a little colored baby. And when she came to work for my mother, I used to babysit with the little colored baby.
Yeah.
Her name was Kathleen. She used to come in the house and iron the clothes for my brother and my daddy. And we liked Kathleen. She came in the house with no problem.
So you have lost track of her. I mean,
She died, and then in the afternoon sometimes she'd come by and sell, I don't know if you know it, but they used to make sauce. I forgot what they made it with pig's feet. I don't like it because I don't like pig's feet, but she used to come around and sell caramels and sauce and Benny candy and everything. She used to come around in the afternoon to make more money. Her name was Kathleen. And as I said, there was no friction. She worked for the next door neighbor. Her name was Kathleen. And she had this little colored little baby, and I used to babysit for her.
So another subject, transportation.
No buses.
no buses.
When I was a teenager, and us girls, when we used to get together and go to the movies, like when Easter, there was 3 or 4 of us that was real close, and we used to dress up, to go downtown, because they used to have a thing on New Wall Street. You could walk down. We went to the movies and whatever, and my friend Betty down the street and our other friend, when we had on new shoes. It was Easter, and when we get to Southern Street, we take off the shoes here on the corner of Southern Street and White, because she lived down the next block, because we had walked from Duval Street because there wasn't no transportation.
How much did a movie cost?
Well, when I was a little girl, for 10 cents, I could go to the movies and get a bag of Kissies for 10 cents.
Well, when I was a little boy, which I'm not that much younger than you actually, but I remember 12 cents to go to the movies. I didn't get the bag of Kissies or whatever, but
5 cents for the movies, 5 cents for the bag at Cress's. I could go to Cress's. And when I went to the movies with my next door neighbor, Marjorie, her sister worked at Page's. Right now, I think they got a dress shop across there from CVS there on the wall. But at that time, Wilhelmina Harvey's mother, her maiden name was Page. They had a drugstore there, and Margie's sister Nellie was the soda jerk. So we used to go there, and Nellie used to make us a root beer float, and we used to get that for nothing. And then, as I said, that was another thing. Sometimes I went with my cousin, but when I went with Margie, I could go to Page's, get a root beer float, and go to Cress's. I didn't have to pay for the root beer float. I only had to pay for the Kissies and the movie 5 cents.
Wilhelmina Harvey is a well-known figure. So
her mother used to own the drugstore right across from where CVS used to be. It was called Page's. The maiden name was Page's. And there used to be a big drugstore and a fountain right there. And next door there was a bookstore. And when we came from the movies, we'd go over to that bookstore. I forgot the man's name, because he moved from there, and he went up to the upper part of Duval Street. But we used to go there and get the funny paper, and I used to get the movie books, and my daddy used to get the New York Tribune or something, and that's where we used to buy the books.
So Wilhelmina Harvey was quite a successful woman?
Oh, she was. She could have been President of the United States, as far as I'm concerned. There's a picture of her there in that book, Wilhelmina. She married Harvey, and he became the mayor of Key West, and that building is named after them. But when I was on the base, she was a teacher, and she gave lessons, and we had her attend to another. We was always going to school down on the base. We went to she was a teacher there. She taught us advanced typing or some kind of a test we had to go to. Then another time, one of the women wanted to be promoted, so we had to get more than just her to go to the class. So I had never heard myself talk, and so we each had to go to the class, even though we weren't the ones that's going to be promoted. But we had to talk about what we were working on, a job. So I got up and I talked. I had never heard my voice before, and I got up and I talked and I gave the speech there. I said, gee, I didn't know I could talk like that. But I knew what I was talking about. But what I'm saying is, she used to teach on the base. And then she got very active. Was a commissioner there. There's a picture of her with them. As far as I can discern, she could have been President of the United States. Oh, and she also addressed my graduation.
Oh. So, back on transportation, you said no buses, but
finally they came during the Second World War.
Okay, so but what a big thing happened in your lifetime, but you were very young. The railroad ended in 1935, and you were 10 or 12.
I never rode on the train.
Right.
But my mother and dad were one of the first passengers that left. We used to have some pictures where she was down in Trumbo. When they were boarding the train, she was my daddy and my mother were one of the first passengers that were on the train to go to Miami.
And did they go just to take the trip and come back?
I guess so. I don't, that's all I know.
So once the train got swept off the tracks in the 35 hurricane, they started building highways over those bridges.
Yeah, but when I was a little girl and we used to go over those bridges, I don't know if you were, because you're much younger than me, but there used to be a story that we used to read in the first grade. I don't know if it's about goats or something, that it was rickety, rickety, rickety. And when I used to ride over the bridges, my brother had a Model T4 that used to be parked here. He had all of his friends go. I don't know why so many girls and boys fit on that. Anyway, we rode up to No Name Key. But when I was a little girl and we were riding over those, I used to close my eyes and you could hear them cracking, pumpity pump. It was real rigid. You could hear the bridges move.
Did you close your eyes because it was a beautiful sound or because you were scared?
No, I just wanted to hear the sound.
So those bridges were pretty narrow.
Yeah, and they made a lot of noise. And I used to close my eyes to listen to it because it reminded me of this story that I used to read as a little girl.
So in your lifetime, there were no highway bridges to Key West until the railroad left.
Well, my daddy used to have a friend. Right now I can't remember his name, but he was a ticket agent up in No Name Key. The only way to get to Miami was by boat. So you could drive to No Name Key and you had to take this ferry boat to go to Miami. And we used to stay over there with my daddy's friend, and I used to play with the little girls and boys there. And his friend was the ticket agent. My other friend that was a friend of these people here, Roberts, he was the pilot of the ferry.
So you took that ferry to Miami?
I never did.
Oh.
I never took the ferry to Miami.
But that was the way you had to
That's
do
the
it.
way you had to go. It's the road stopped at No Name Key. And if you wanted to go to Miami, you'd have to take the ferry boat.
Just tell me yes or no. Did you know David Wilkowski?
I know of the man my mother used to work for him. He had a men's shop down on New Wall Street, and my mother, I said, worked there for a while. I heard her someone time say she worked there at that men's shop. But I never was in his shop. I was only in Lewinsky's. I was in Lewinsky's, Aronovitz, Kansas. We were in all the Jew stores. There used to be another shop down at the other end of Duval Street that sold toys and things. The name was Johnson. And I was telling Eleanor the other day, I said that was the first time I learned that there wasn't any Santa Claus because they were going to buy me a doll baby. Are you thirsty? You want any water?
No, thank you.
I don't have no liquor. I don't have no liquor. One day they said, how come you got this whiskey bottle down there in the bottom of your cabinet you don't drink? I said, I used to keep that when I used to make cake, and those things, you used to have to put it on the top of that to take it out and cool it.
A funny question. Corruption and crime. Key West over the years has been known for some drug activity and corruption in city government. Bumfardo. You know the name Bumfardo? He was the fire chief.
Yeah, but you pronounced it different.
Huh?
You pronounced it different.
Okay, how do you say Bumfardo?
I don't know, but I've overheard about some corruption in the fire department. I don't know anything about it, but I've heard about it. Let's put it that way. But I don't know anything about it, but I've heard that happened. Let's put it that way.
Well, the word was that the fire chief was selling drugs as he leaned back in his chair in front of the fire station. And he disappeared once they decided to arrest him. But you vaguely remember it.
I only know that happened, but okay. I don't know. I can't tell you nothing.
What about drug activity? Because when they had the roadblock, when Key West seceded.
And, I'm not too familiar with that about succeeding from Key West.
Yeah.
I know that it happened, but I wasn't into it.
Well, it was a joke. It was a joke, and it wasn't a joke.
No, because I know, I don't know, one of the guys that used to work on the base was very interested in that or in it or something when they succeeded, when Key West was supposed to succeed. But I didn't take no part in that. I didn't know anything about that, except I said, this guy, I think, was in it or something. I don't know.
Well, supposedly there was an inordinate amount of drug activity in Key West as a kind of an entryway, I guess, for illegal drugs, and so the federal government decided to put in a roadblock on the 18-mile stretch, stopping every single car and inspecting every single car going in and out. And they did this for a period of time. Now, it was at least a period of days. Whether it was,
what year was that?
Yeah, good question.
Because that's why I'm not.
70s,
I know
70s or 80s.
I know it was happening, but I don't know nothing about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you anything about it. I know it happened, but.
Okay. Politics. Any particular thoughts on politics? Mayors, commissions. Jimmy Weekly is a current name that's quite.
Yeah, I've heard of that name, but
you're not into the politics.
No, I know that name. Also, one of the girls that was my best friend in high school, Emma Carrera, they married the Cates. She was a commissioner here in Key West. And when we were in school, she was president of the student council. And when she graduated, she was a commissioner here in Key West.
And that's her son that was mayor.
Yeah, I mean, and the Cates now, yeah, she was married to a Cates.
Yep. Now,
and she married, and the man she married, Cecil Cates, was in our class. They never talked to each other. I don't know how they met. We were together, a whole group of us. Cecil was never in that group. How Emma and Cecil got together, I don't know.
That's funny. So you've been well taken care of by Barb and Buddy from down the street. They moved into the house next door, and she has been just wonderful to you. You have been very lucky with your family and your friends and your niece. Now, Sandra is your niece's daughter, right?
What?
Sandra is your niece's daughter. Do I have to?
No, Sandra is my niece's daughter. My niece's daughter.
Yeah.
And Eleanor is her mother.
Sandra takes wonderful care of you, and
Friday she's going to take me to the doctor, and next month I have to go to the doctor because I haven't been to the medical doctor for a long time, and they calling her on because they keep sending me my medicine, and I haven't been to see him for a long time. So she called him and she said I have to come to see her. So maybe next month. I said I'll go. Why should I go? It ain't nothing wrong with.
But anyway, I cannot emphasize enough how wonderful your family has been to you. And
not only my family, but my friends. Like you, when you all come, you take time out to take me to breakfast. My friend Robin across the street, she came from Fredericks, Maryland many, many years ago and moved across the street. And now she makes sure that I have something to eat. Every week she brings me milk, chicken from Publix. She makes sure I have ice cream. She makes me everything. Now this neighbor that just moved in, Jackie from New York, she knocks on my door or she calls me up. She says, I'm going to the store. Do you need anything? She knows I like sweets. She goes to that shop here on White Street. She brings me cake. I mean, I don't know what it is, but they're just wonderful. My other friend that goes to the store for me, Bobby Kate, I knew her mother when we worked in dispersing on the base, and she's adopted. And I knew when she was adopted, her mother couldn't have any children, so they had left her on the convent grounds. But none of the Catholics got her. But Bobby's mother, her name's Catherine Shaw. That's the one that her daddy used to work in my daddy's Buckeye. she wanted
Buckeye, that's the name.
Buckeye, and so she wanted this little baby, but she had a struggle getting it because evidently they must have thought that the baby was Catholic, and they were Protestant, and she was having a fit because they were going to take the baby from her. So, so that's how I found out about her. So she met me in the store one day, and then when she found out that I was like this, she called me up and wanted to know if I wanted something from the store, So, and then this friend that took me to the store yesterday, Robin, she's a member of the Mormon church that Sandra belongs to, and Sandra introduced me to her. And now when she's in town, she calls me up. She takes me to the grocery store, to the Dollar Day store, and when I only want to go shopping, she takes me shopping.
Whether you want to go or not.
Yeah, and then she says so she wants to go shopping, but she proposed. She says, you know how to shop anyway. And so that's the way. And then I met another lady, that lady, Rosa, but now she moved to North Carolina. And she was taking me out by the airport to exercise my legs. But she wasn't living here with her daughter, and she wanted to move out, but the rent was so high. So she moved to some little town in the Carolinas where her son lives, but she doesn't live with her son. She lives at this little apartment. So I miss her because she used to take me too. But when she was here one day, she came to be at a wedding for someone she worked for. So she only stopped at 2 places, to the wedding and to see me.
Yeah.
And she calls me back and forth. Her name is Rosa.
And Barb and Buddy rented next door.
And they rented next door. And that's how I met. And when she was there, she was over there cleaning something, because when she came out the house, she was apologizing. Her hands was all dirty. And I said, I just want to welcome you to Pine Street. And that's how we met. And now when Stacy on the corner, that she's a pilot for Delta. And when she moved there, I invited her on Pine Street. So she used to come to visit me all the time. But later, she hasn't been in town too much. Now I understand she's back in Key West for a week.
And you're the Princess of Pine Street.
Yeah, but I gotta live to be 100 before I become queen.
Well, we'll make sure that happens.
Yeah, when I don't go too often to get my hair cut at Frank's. He tells everybody, and every time I go there, she says, I can't believe this. This lady's been living in the same house for all these years. And every time I go, he tells the same story. She's been living in the same house.
And which hairdresser is it?
Frank. He used to be right there on Flagler, but now I don't know what happened. Now he's with this other lady. It's right off of Josephine Street. His name is Frank.
Now listen,
I think Abby goes to him.
We want to be at your 100th birthday, and we're not down here in September, so it doesn't have to be in September.
I don't know. I don't want a birthday. I want him just to take me to Marathon or somewhere. I want a cheeseburger and a Coca-Cola.
That's wonderful.
Every birthday say, you want a party? I said, no, I just want a cheeseburger and a Coca-Cola.
So what do you know about Hemingway? I forget what years he was here, but
Hemingway was a good friend of my uncle, Dr. Gailey, and Sloppy Joe's. Sloppy Joe, did you know this? Sloppy Joe's wife is a cousin of mine.
Really?
A first cousin.
And Sloppy Joe, his name was Joe what?
Joe, what's his name?
I know it, but
I can't think of it.
Joe, oh my gosh.
I can't think of it.
So his wife was a cousin.
Cousin of mine, yeah.
Wonderful. So
and they used to live here in this corner house. Their daughter Anita that died, she had cancer. She had another daughter named Edna May, and they had a son. And Edna May used to have a house right down here on Georgia Street, and they sold it. And they have a house out there by the Casa Marina. They had 2 daughters, Edna May and Anita, and a younger son. I forgot his name.
So Tennessee Williams, what did you knew he was in town? What else?
Well, he had a house out there, and I went one time when they were filming that movie Rose
Tattoo.
Okay. rose tattoo. My mother's best friend, what was her name? She was one of the extras in the movie. One of my mama's best friends.
So what do you remember about hurricanes?
Well, the first year, when I was a little girl, we used to think it was a great thing.
Great fun, huh?
Great fun, because Joan Daughtry here on the corner, she wrote a book. It's probably still in the library because she was smart. She was much younger than me, but she had a sister Jackie, and her name was Joan. That was Mrs. Park's granddaughter. She wrote a book about the hurricanes, but her cousin Bobby Rob is next door over here. We used to like to get together and have. I don't know if you've heard of You Need a Biscuit.
Oh yeah.
So we used to like it, and during the hurricanes, we used to like to make sandwiches with Una biscuits and cheese and jelly. And so when she wrote the book, she wrote. I've never read the book, but I guess it's still in the library. Her name was Joan Daughtry.
So back then, people wouldn't leave the island. They just
We stayed right here in this house. This house stood all the hurricanes. Now my mother said, I don't know if it was that house or the next house went over the pillars, but this house, nothing ever happened to it.
Well, you're raised up.
But you know something. These pillars, the house is right on the top of the pillars. But when my brother-in-law went to build their house, he came and took the measurements of the house. This ceiling used to be much higher, but I remodeled it. I brought the ceilings down lower.
Oh.
But when he built his house on South Street, he built it the same way. But what I was going to tell you was, when he built the house, he buried his pillars cemented down in the ground. That was very smart.
Oh yeah.
But this house has got a good story, because one year my mother said this house has stood so many hurricanes. I don't know if it's going to stand the hurricanes, because she said the water would come up here, but right here, this house is on the highest point of the island, next to Solaris Hill. Right here, this house is the highest point. So the water would come up and go back down. So she said, but it stood so many, I don't know. So we went to my sister's, we went to stay at my sister's house. And of course I was little, so I was sleeping on the floor, and that's beside the point. But what I was trying to do, they had I forgot what the tree was. Anyway, the lightning struck, and so they didn't have any electricity. So we came back to this house. We had electricity and we had coffee. Nothing happened to this house.
That's wonderful. So.
But now they say it's not as high, but I don't believe it, because when it rains, it's no difference.
Well, we just hope that it never.
Well, my mother had to give away some of the property when they paved this street.
Oh.
Because where I got this fence, the property used to go way out, but she had to give some of the property. But the people across the street, there wasn't any buildings there. So when they built after the Second World War, see, they got a bigger front yard, because they didn't give any of the property because the street was already there.
Right, you could do it after. So there's always been a gay influence in Key West going way, way back.
Well, I don't know about way back, but currently, yes.
And you're very aware of that.
I'm very aware of that. But what I'm saying is, you never know, so you can't talk. And so the other day, he sent me something. He sent me Shirley Temple, and he's got another friend. And when they were in some shop somewhere, they saw the Shirley Temple, and they knew I'd always talked about Shirley Temple. I probably told you about it. I only had the only Shirley Temple doll in Key West.
I know, and you didn't tell me that.
Oh, when I was a little girl, my uncle, Dr. Gailey, whenever he went, he was my second Santa Claus. Whenever he went, he was from Philadelphia. Whenever he went home, he brought me a gift. All kinds of things, it doesn't matter. But he brought me a Shirley Temple doll. there was never no Shirley Temple dolls in Key West. When I played with my girlfriends, I had the only Shirley Temple doll on Pine Street.
So these people knew that you liked that, and you didn't have that original doll anymore.
No, I didn't have, because Sandra's mother, Eleanor, my mother gave it to her to play with, and she ruined Shirley Temple. But I used to have a Shirley Temple. You could see all my Shirley Temple's movies.
Yeah.
When I had a Shirley Temple scrapbook, and my mother used to show this scrapbook to Sandra's mother, Eleanor. The first word she said was eyes, eyes, and she was just a little tot, so I didn't have that. And anyway, I've always talked about Shirley Temple to Barbara and Shirley Temple to Bill. And when he and his friend was somewhere in some shop years ago, they found me this Shirley Temple. And I got Shirley Temple on my bed next to me. In the twin bed, I got Shirley Temple. And I also ordered a Shirley Temple that's there in my bedroom, that when you play it on the Good Ship Lollipop. Have you ever seen the movie with Shirley Temple? With Shirley Temple? And she was singing on the Good Ship Lollipop. But I got it there, and she's holding the lollipop, and I got it. And the music stopped. I don't know, the battery ran dead or something, and I couldn't find it anywhere. Barbara went all over. I don't know. I thought she told me the story. She got it from some woman up in New Jersey, but the other day she said she ordered it because the company that makes them is not making them anymore. She I don't know, she called there anyway. So she finally got the new battery. So now I got it in there, I could play for it. She sings on the Good Ship Lollipop.
That's wonderful.
So I tell my family I got the only Shirley Temple singing on the Good Ship Lollipop in the world.
In the world. They're
I don't know of anybody that's got it.
I bet there's a Shirley Temple museum somewhere.
Well, I don't know where he got the Shirley Temple doll, but I ordered a Shirley Temple doll where I ordered this one many years ago, before Sandra had her little girl, Ariel. So I gave her a Shirley Temple doll. So Sandra has a Shirley Temple doll. And if you look it up in your book, in your phone, it's worth quite a bit of money.
That's wonderful. So did you ever hear of Stephen Fetchit?
Yes. He was born in Key West.
Right.
Stephen Fetchit was born in Key West. Well, did you ever hear of Buddy Epson?
Oh, yeah.
Well, his aunt used to live over here on the corner, Mrs. Dupree's house right there on the corner. It was his aunt, and I guess it was his little niece. Her name was Norma Jean, and I used to play with her.
So did he ever come here?
I don't know about him, but his family, his aunt lived right there.
So Stephen Fetchit, was he before your time?
Well,
his name was Lincoln Perry.
I've always heard that he was from Key West.
Yeah.
But I didn't remember him as a kid being in Key West. I don't know but I know that he was from Key West.
So Blue Heaven, they talk about there being a bordello upstairs. Of course, that's great talk, when you're promoting a restaurant or something. But do you remember anything about bordellos in Key West?
Unless it's in that book.
Bordellos,
I don't remember anything.
Bordellos and the drug trade you seem to be unfamiliar with.
But you know what? I just remembered that there was a place on the other side of town. It was called the Garden of Roses. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. So
and Sally Rand used to be down at the Garden of Roses.
Now, was it in Bahama Village?
It was down on the other side of town. That's all I know. Okay, but the only thing that I was trying to ask Martha, I don't like to admit this, but I think some of my family owned it. His name was Burl Atchison. Do you have anything on a Burl Atchison?
No, because I don't go out sideways on these families, so I just have your direct Atchisons.
So that came to me the other day. And then there used to be, Martha brought it to my attention yesterday when she was visiting me, and I had forgotten about it. There was also a place called Painter's. I don't know if it was a nightclub, but the name Painter was a very well-known name in Key West. I don't know if he owned a saloon or what he did, but the name Painter I guess it's Pena. I don't know, but it was a name that was all over Key West. And
Doesn't ring a bell with me. What about the beaches? Were you ever much as kids? Did you ever go to the beaches much?
There, over there, my nephew named his little boy Martella Towers.
Really?
Yeah, because over there it was called the Carl Al Casino. And when I was a little girl, I'm always talking with my sister and my brother. They were 8 and 10 years older than me, so they had boyfriends and blah blah blah. So one of the Pritchett sons, and one of the sons, they had an orchestra, and they used to go over to the Carlisle Casino. They used to have, I think, on the downstairs, they used to dance, and I don't know what they did upstairs, but on Sundays or something, they used to have some kind of an entertainment. And my mother, when they used to go, my mother used to make ham and potato salad, and they go over there and have like a luncheon. And I, as a little girl, I used to play under the porch, because they had plenty of white sand, not like they got now. This was sand, white sand, not full of rock. And I used to play with it in my little bucket. And they used to go over there and dance.
Was this at Higgs Beach? Or?
No, not Higgs Beach. Right there, they call it Martella Towers, right over there.
Okay.
Now maybe they call it Higgs Beach. I don't know.
Okay. And
they used to call it over there the butcher pen too. Because remember when they used to bring the beef in, they used to bring it in by boats down here on Caroline Street. Then they used to take it over there and they used to butcher it, and they called it the butcher pen. It was over there where that German doctor, he held that lady for a long time. You heard about that story?
I don't think I did.
You didn't hear about him?
No.
You didn't hear about Long Castle?
No. What's that name? Let me write it down.
He was a German. He was a doctor down at the Marine Hospital, and he fell in love with one of the women that was down there. She had pneumonia and she died, and he stole the body, and he carried it up over there, and he used to sing to her and everything. It was a big story about.
How do you spell his name?
Bon, B-O-N.
Yeah.
If you look down at the library, it's probably in the Citizen.
Castle.
Yeah, Von Castle. He was a German doctor.
I'll check on that.
And he had his airplane was out there where it wasn't flying anywhere, somewhere out there on the beach. And he used to play with his body. He had it in Pasteur, Paris, and he stole this twice. Finally, they got it, and they buried it down in because I think she must have been Catholic. And they buried it in the Catholic cemetery. He stole it again, and he took it. Then they got it again, and when I was working on the base, they took it, and they put it in the Lopez funeral home. And I don't know who it was, but me and some other girls, we stopped at the funeral home to see this lady. Well, she wasn't a lady anymore. I mean, she wasn't human anymore. She was in plaster Paris, but we went to see her.
That's amazing. So what is your memory of Truman visiting Key West?
Oh, I met Mr. Truman. Did you know that?
No.
Well, I worked on the base, you know.
Right.
And one morning, I used to go early. And one morning, he was taking his walk. And I was going into my work, and I said, "Good morning, Mr. President."
Isn't that something?
And they were very good friends of my uncle, Dr. Gailey, and the Spotswood. Because the Spotswood is related to my uncle, Dr. Gailey. They related. They were originally Maloney's, and the Maloney's used to be a well-known family in Key West. Yeah, they used to come to visit the Spotswoods all the time, and the Spotswoods is related to my uncle.
So how did?
And I used to see. What was the name? It was the house. Truman House was right across from the ad building where I worked, and I could see her out on the porch.
So how did the Spotswoods connect with the Truman? And I'm going to give an answer that I think it is, and that's because he was sheriff.
Yeah.
and so maybe they had the initial connection and became friends.
And originally, the original Spotswood. I won't tell you the whole story, but about Spotswood. But he's the one that founded Comcast.
Right.
And he's related to my cousin.
You say that again. He's the one that founded what?
Comcast, the TV station.
Oh, Comcast?
Yeah, he's the big one.
Okay, that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mariel Boatlift. When the Cubans all came over here in 19...
Yeah, well, I was working on the base. I also was sitting at my desk in disbursement office when they killed President Kennedy.
Really?
I was also sitting at that desk when they first made the moon. Did they go to the moon?
Yep.
The first shuttle to the moon.
So you say sitting at that desk. Was there a TV in the place? Did you watch it on TV in the office?
No, but we just got news or something.
And so the Mariel Boatlift, I would think the Navy would have been quite involved with that, but it didn't affect your office.
No, well, it affected it because we got a lot of people, a lot of Navy came in.
Yeah. Okay, Truman Annex, all that area that is now made into fancy houses, used to be Navy property. So were you working for the Navy when they left town?
Yeah, I was working for the Navy when the Navy left town.
And that was a big thing?
A great big thing. Do you know how much? I forgot how much. They used to go to the bank and get it first. We used to pay the Navy by cash, and they used to go to the Florida National Bank to get the money. And I was in. Money didn't mean nothing to me because I had so much money. And one time I was in what was it? The place where they keep the money.
I don't know.
Anyway, I was in there where they were counting all this money. I've been thinking about that. I said that never crossed my mind to take all that money, millions of dollars that they were counting out money. So we used to pay by cash. And we used to go out in sections, but we had the sonar school, and I used to go out with the sonar school. It was in 3 sections. We used to go over to, they had a squadron over that way in NAS. We used to go all out and pay by cash. And it got to be such a problem. I was so glad when they made checks, because even at Christmas holidays, we'd have to work late at night, So I was glad when they did checks.
Well, Miss Lenora, as we call you, we have a dog entering the mix, I guess. I have made many notes, and I've gone through most of them, and if I search for more, it'll just become painful on the viewer. But anyway, I didn't give the date, which I will give on the cover sheet of this movie, but today is the 25th of April in the year 2023. And so that is the date of our video, and I will be editing this and getting back to you with a copy as soon as I can. I thank you very much. You have been a tremendous participant. You look like you have something more to say.
I got plenty to say.
Well, you know what? Seriously, there may be a...
You know what I was going to say? Doesn't have nothing to do with this, but my brother-in-law and my brother were good swimmers and divers, because I got a lot to tell you about my brother. But when my brother was in the Marine Corps, when they were on maneuvers in California, he saved a man from drowning. And my brother-in-law and my brother, up there on the Boca Chica Bridge, I don't know if you know it, but my mother told me when they went on a Sunday school picnic, there's quicksand, and one of the teachers drowned. But that didn't stop my brother and my brother-in-law from diving off of Boca Chica Bridge. There's quicksand there.
But they didn't, but
they drove over the bridge.
Well, I may come back for a second chapter, but I think we have enough chewed off here so far. So I will sign off and thank you very, very
Well,
much.
thank you. I hope I haven't gone off the, what is it, what this track or whatever.
Your family and the Monroe County Historical Society will appreciate your production here. So I want to thank you very much, and with that, I will turn off